Has anyone ever even played Overwatch's tutorial? Or even know that it exists at all, for that matter? Well, it does actually exist. It's not a figment of our imaginations, and it's easily one of the worst tutorials that I have ever laid my eyes upon. So let's jump right into it as if we were a brand new player. The tutorial opens with Soldier 76 walking through the front door like the badass gilf that he is, before he's greeted by Athena summoning Tracer to help him through the tutorial. You stare at Tracer's ass for a bit whilst he walks around, then you follow after her before she leads you to the practice range doors, where she then proceeds to vanish out of reality. You go through the door to the practice range, where the door closes behind you, and then you go through a basic training routine showing all of Soldier's abilities, his primary fire, his cooldowns, and his ultimate, before finally a door opens to where you capture an objective, and that's it. That's the entire tutorial, and that's all that new players get when opening Overwatch for the first time. The only other resources in the training section of Overwatch's main menu are the practice range, which doesn't teach you all that much. It's just a place to go shoot your gun and do fun stuff, and of course playing against AI, which is not that helpful. You can still find people playing it though, which is kind of insane, but it's not actually very useful for learning new things. It's just practicing what you've already learned against AI. So my first problem with this tutorial is that it only teaches you how to play a single character out of a roster that now has 37 different heroes to play as. And while Soldier is the most straightforward and approachable heroes for those that are semi-familiar with other first-person shooter style games, Overwatch is not a simple first-person shooter game like some others. It has many MOBA elements and completely unique heroes that have their own abilities and primary weapons. And even if you are only going to learn and play one hero at first, which is what most players will likely do when they first approach the game, they'll pick a hero and then slowly learn the ins and outs of their kit. But there are so many abilities and status effects that you still need to know how they work even if you are not playing as the hero. It is still vital information that you need to know if you are playing against someone that is playing that hero. I think by far the biggest culprit for this is Ana and her biotic grenade. When an enemy Ana hits you with a biotic grenade, it completely prevents you from being healed for a few seconds. This is a massively impactful status effect, and while most players know and fear Ana's biotic grenade, throughout my years of playing Overwatch, I have always seen countless clips of new players raging about not being healed, when the reason that they weren't being healed is because they were under the effects of Ana's biotic grenade. But because they never played Ana or went in to look at her abilities manually in the most hidden menu of all of Overwatch that they don't even show you exists, these players simply don't understand how these abilities work because the game does not tell them. And Ana's grenade isn't the only ability new players struggle with. I've seen clips before of people not knowing how certain abilities work even after hundreds, if not thousands of hours of playing Overwatch, just because there is nowhere in the game that will give you specifics on how abilities work. I remember playing a game with some friends in Diamond and Overwatch 2 where we taught one of our DPS to not shoot Zarya bubbles, and he actually did not know that Zarya bubbles had a timer and would go away on their own if you don't shoot them. He had hundreds of hours in the game and didn't know one of the most vital details to playing against a Zarya, which is that if you don't damage her bubbles, you can completely prevent her from gaining charge and becoming a massive DPS threat. And let's not forget about that very hidden, tucked away menu I mentioned earlier. It's hidden way in the hero gallery under hero information, and even that is almost completely useless. You can also access it at any time in-game by pressing F1, which I'm sure that a lot of people don't know about as well. To go into how useless some of the information here is, just as an example, I can't even blame someone for not knowing that Zarya bubbles expire after a certain amount of time, because in the hero information tab, all that it says under Zarya's ability for particle barrier is create a damage barrier around you. That's it. No mention of how long it lasts, how much health the barrier has, just that it creates one. That's all the game ever tells you, aside from some hero information pages that just don't tell you what you need to know about an ability. There's some that are also just straight up missing information. At least for Zarya's bubble, it does what it tells you it does. It creates a damage barrier around you. But for some abilities like Ana's Nano Boost in particular, It only says that it increases an ally's damage while reducing damage taken. No mention at all about the healing that Nano Boost also provides. There's honestly so many useless bits of info in the hero information tabs that you could easily make a whole video about it, so I'll just move on from it for now. So yeah, these are basically useless, very basic descriptions that don't even tell you anything useful, like damage values for different abilities, or health values for stuff like barriers. So if you want to know anything useful, such as that, you need to go to a fan-made wiki. But thank God that Blizzard tells us what we need to know. That Reinhardt's hammer is a devastating melee weapon. The more annoying thing is that the game doesn't even explain some important gameplay mechanics anywhere in the tutorial. Like, sure, it kind of makes sense that in a gameplay tutorial built around only Soldier 76, it would maybe be difficult to include information about other heroes' abilities, but the game doesn't even explain basic mechanics that could easily be shown by playing Soldier 76 in the tutorial. Nowhere in the tutorial does it ever mention anything about critical hits. They also never tell you about how the different types of health work, like armor reducing damage taken by 30% is a pretty important detail when you're playing against a tank that has armor, or any character that has armor for that matter, since some non-tank heroes do have armor, such as Bastion and Torbjorn. They could easily just make a random custom training bot that shows up that has armor, and then just say, oh yeah, look, the orange health is called armor. Armor reduces the damage taken by 30%. Notice how this robot takes a bit longer to kill than the normal ones. And then boom, there you go. You've now taught the player what armor does. But health is just health. It will still go down. You don't really need to know the exact specifics of it, but it's definitely very helpful. But the worst thing is that they don't teach you anything at all about fall-off distance. I'm sure that every single person watching this video has seen a clip before of a bronze diva holding left click on an enemy that is 100 miles away and somehow actually managing to deal negative damage to them. This is a classic Overwatch moment that I'm sure a lot of people remember. And all of these poor divas could have been saved if only the tutorial had taught them that weapons deal less damage at long range. And Soldier is a character that they could very easily sew this on because he does have fall-off damage on his primary. They could even go further and teach you that projectiles, like Soldier 76's Helix rockets, don't have fall-off. He has both a weapon that has fall-off and an ability that does not. They could have easily just shown you a training robot that's far away and been like, wow, see how you deal less damage to it because it's far away. And then also showed you, oh, but your ability is a projectile, so it deals the same distance no matter how far away the enemy is. And there you've now taught players about fall-off distance, and as well as the distinction between projectiles that are not affected by fall-off distance and hit-scan weapons that are. Now, for how I would fix a lot of these issues with the tutorial, I think that they do just need to expand upon the shooting range section in the tutorial, as mentioned before, and include a section where they teach you about critical hits, teach you about fall-off distance, and teach you about the different types of health. Now, as for status effects, I really think they need to at least have some kind of a hero manual that players have shown after completing the game's tutorial. The first page should immediately just show you all of the different kinds of status effects that can be inflicted in Overwatch, such as Ana's biotic grenades, Zenyatta's discord, Samura's hack, etc., so that players are at least shown all of these status effects first, as these are abilities that heavily interact with your own gameplay experience, even if you're not playing the characters that use them. And new players will be very confused, bewildered, and maybe even frustrated when they're suddenly being exposed to these effects in a match of Overwatch. The hero guide could then go into a full breakdown of each of the heroes in Overwatch, basically just being a much more in-depth version of the hero information tab, showing the different fall-off range, damage values, health, cooldowns, everything else about all of the abilities of the heroes and their weapons, just so that all of this information is actually available somewhere in the game that players can go and check for themselves. Because the hero information tab is actually useful for the first time that people play a character. They'll have no idea what to do, and the very basic descriptions let players know what abilities do what, without overwhelming them with too much information all at the same time. The problem is that once they do get the handle of the hero and their abilities, and they want to learn more about the specifics, the game kind of just gives them the finger and tells them to screw off. You really need a more advanced hero information screen for players that want to know exactly how these abilities work and the exact damage numbers once they have a handle on these different heroes and how they play. It's absolutely ridiculous that players need to go to a wiki to find actual information on even something as basic as how much damage their weapon deals, or how much health something like a Zarya bubble has. So yeah, that's it for this video. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and until next time, see ya.